studio overlooked the cemetery wall. Through the thin glass, you could hear the city's distant clatter of hooves and iron wheels. But closer, there was only the low moan of wind through the leaning stones. From the church beside it came a faint, sweetish odor, like flowers left to rot. My model, Tessie, used to complain about the view. "Must you always find the gloomiest spot in the city, Scott?" She'd laugh. And for a moment, her voice, a bright, clear bell, would fill the cold corners, bringing warmth into that hollow place. It was her laughter, I think, that drew his attention. One moment she was joking, calling the shabby figure drifting behind the fence the watchman. The next, a sudden silence fell, broken only by the drip of turpentine in the jar. He had stopped, and slowly, deliberately looked up at our window. We saw his face, pale, puffy, like something found in damp earth, and a laughter died in our throats. That night, the dream came. I saw a carriage hearse waiting by the church gate, its black lacquer gleaming under a sickly moon. It was pulled by two gaunt horses, their heads bowed, so still they might have been carved from stone. The driver turned, and it was him, the watchman. He looked up at my window, and his eyes held a look of dreadful expectation. I knew, with a certainty that froze my soul, that he was not waiting for someone in the cemetery. He was waiting for someone in my building. He was waiting for Tessie. After that, the work felt different. The light in the studio seemed colder. I couldn't capture Tessie's smile anymore. My brushes kept tracing the hollows of her eyes with a dry, scratching sound. The watchman's face haunted me. It was a face from a dream I couldn't place, a half-remembered horror. It was that feeling, that gnawing dread, that made me pull the book from my trunk with the groan of rusty hinges. I had it hidden away, The King in Yellow. It had come from my cousin, Louis Castaigne. He pressed it into my hands one night, his own trembling. He spoke of his cousin Hildred, a relation of mine too from the other side of the family, a man I barely knew. Hildred had fallen from a horse, but his mind had truly shattered only after finding that damnable play. But it wasn't just Hildred's fate that terrified Louis. It was what he himself had glimpsed within the pages. He whispered to me of lost Carcosa, his eyes burning with a strange, feverish light. He entrusted the book to me not with fear, but with conviction. Hildred saw only politics, Louis insisted, his voice low and intense. He missed the truth. But you, Scott, you're an artist. You can show them what Carcosa truly is. Take it. Reveal it. I dismissed his fervor as a different kind of grief and hid the book away. But it was a curiosity that gnawed at me, a secret that begged to be shared. That evening, with a bravado I did not feel, I showed it to Tessie. "This is what has my cousins so terrified," I said, with a laugh that felt thin even to me. We decided to read it, almost as a joke. The words of the first act were banal, the plot almost childishly simple. Yet, as the pages turned, a chill crept into the room that had nothing to do with the night air. We felt the poison coiled beneath the prose. And when I reached the end of the act, neither of us suggested turning the page to the second. The next morning, the studio was gray and still. Tessie, trying to break the spell of the night before, picked up the dreaded book from the table. "It's just paper, Scott," she said, her voice a little too bright. As she turned it over in her hands, a small, heavy envelope slipped from between the pages of the second act, the part we had not dared to read. It landed on the floorboards with a soft thud. The crinkle of the thick paper was loud in the quiet room as she picked it up. She broke the red wax seal with a sharp snap. Inside, the onyx sign, black as a moonless sky, carved into 3 curling arms that writhed if you stared too long. It was the symbol from the play's margins. She asked, "What is it?" But we both knew. We had dreamed its shape. And in that moment, all of Louis's panicked stories became horribly real. This was no curiosity. This was proof. That connection, that terrible proof, was all it took. We both knew we had to see the end. We opened the book again. That night, the studio was a tomb. The single oil lamp on the table cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, and the only sound was the frantic ticking of the clock on the mantel. The sign lay between us, a cold star on old wood. We didn't speak of it. We spoke of other things, childhood, the sea, anything to fill the silence. But her eyes kept flicking to the door. We had read the final act, the words that opened more than eyes. We had seen the pallid mask and knew that no door could remain closed to its master. A knock, gentle, formal, like a coffin lid closing. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood. My hand moved without asking. I opened the door. He stood in the threshold, the watchman, skin sagging like wet parchment, the sign pulsing where his heart should be. Beyond him, the threshold of the door was no longer wood and iron, but a tear in the fabric of the night. And through that tear, I saw it. Not a man, but a presence. Something vast, whose form was suggested only by the slow, majestic drift of tattered yellow rags. The color itself was a wound in the darkness, and the air grew thin and cold, tasting of ozone and dust from dead stars. It was a king, whose crown was the void and whose kingdom was the madness that follows when you see too much. The watchman took a step, a wet, soft sound. He did not look at me. His eyes, like clouded pools of standing water, were fixed on Tessie. He moved slowly, deliberately, raising a hand that was not a hand at all, but a mass of rotten, swollen flesh. He was not pointing at her. He was pointing at the sign she now clutched in her fist. Tessie's eyes were wide. She made a small sound, a gasp, as if of sudden, unbearable understanding. She looked from the creature to the onyx in her hand, and then to the thing I saw, looming behind him in the doorway. She saw it too. The pallid mask, the tattered robes. She saw the king. Her head fell back against the cushions with a soft thud. She did not scream. The air bent inward. The onyx fell from her lifeless hand, clattering on the floorboards. A sound escaped my own throat, a choked, broken thing. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there, but a voice that was not my own, a whisper from the yellow tatters in the doorway, commanded me. And my hand obeyed. Then the creature turned to me. The air filled with the sound of wet cloth tearing as it crossed the room, its soft feet making no sound. A whisper slithered through the silence, a sibilant hiss that was almost a word. It snatched the onyx from my hand with a sickening wet crack, its touch both burning cold and slimy. I felt a blow, not of force, but of pure, crushing cold. A dull thud that seemed to echo inside my bones. Then another. As the world dissolved into blackness, I saw it fall, a heap of sodden rags and something horribly pale. My last sight was of a single, tattered yellow ribbon, fluttering down. They said I raved when they found me. Through the fog of my own pain, I remember muffled sounds, heavy boots on the floorboards, the rustle of a coat, a policeman, his face grim, and a doctor kneeling by the other body. I can still hear his words. "It's impossible," he said. This man must have been dead for months. They buried her under a sky that felt too low, too close. In the weeks that followed, I did not paint, but the visions burned behind my eyes, demanding release. Finally, I surrendered. I stretched a new canvas, the largest I owned, and let the madness guide my hand. I painted the shores of the Lake of Holly, a still black mirror for a sky that was not our own. The twin suns set behind the impossible angles of the towers, and the paint itself seemed to move, the colors shifting, the perspective deepening, until the canvas was no longer a surface, but a space. The smell of turpentine faded, replaced by the scent of dust from dead stars. The ticking of the clock was lost to the sound of a low alien wind. I took a step, and the floorboards of my studio were gone, replaced by the cold, black stone of Carcosa's streets. I walked toward the tallest tower, the one that pierced the clouds of the outer dark, and entered the court of the dragon. And there, arranged before a throne of black stone, was the court. I saw them all. My cousin Louis stood serene, his earthly fervor now a placid, terrible faith. Beside him, Hildred, no longer a broken man from an asylum, but a proud noble in this impossible kingdom. His eyes clear with a purpose I finally understood. Before the throne knelt a man who looked as though he had just completed a final, terrible transaction. His face a mask of rapturous terror, the first of the endless acolytes to come. In a shadowed corner, Mr. Wilde still scribbled, a hunched, eternal chancellor cataloging the fall of worlds. The women the sign had claimed stood silent among the courtiers. Constance, her face a mask of placid beauty, and Tessie, my Tessie, her laughter gone, her eyes holding the same distant light as the twin suns. Near them stood the artist Boris, his eyes forever fixed on the two figures beside him, a woman of impossible beauty, Geneva, her hands still dripping with a liquid that shimmered with a cold internal light, and the actor who had dared to wear the mask, now a perfect statue, his form shimmering with the same cold light, his face a mask of serene horror. And as my gaze lifted past them, I saw that they were only the beginning. Beyond them, a silent, endless congregation stretched into the gloom, their faces turned toward the throne in mute adoration. Above us all, the sky was not black, but a swirling vortex of dying galaxies, where the twin suns of Carcosa burned like malevolent eyes in the chaos. The stars of the Empyrean wept light, and strange constellations writhed as if in agony. It was a threshold, and beyond it lay only the silence of a consumed god. And on the throne, beneath a tattered mantle, he waited. The yellow of his mantle was a living thing, a color that bled into the air, staining the very fabric of sight with its majestic, rapturous light. I could not see a face beneath the pallid mask, only a suggestion of a form that defied geometry, a shape made of pure absence. His crown was not of gold, but a halo of dying light, of constellations being devoured. He did not speak, but a thought bloomed in my mind, a welcome that was also a consumption, a final, terrible homecoming. And in that last moment, as my own consciousness unraveled into just another yellow thread in that endless tapestry, I finally understood. The silence that was to follow had a name: the King.
You've reached the end of the signal. If the story held you, stay with us.
Like and subscribe, it really does help.
There are more corridors ahead, more transmissions waiting to be heard.
Thank you for listening.